Hey there, welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into a recent Forbes article about a pretty significant shift in Starbucks' policy. It really got me thinking about the future of how we connect and the role these third spaces play in our lives.
Yeah, it's interesting how a seemingly simple policy change can spark such a broader conversation, isn't it?
Totally. Remember how Starbucks used to be the spot to hang out, work, or just people watch? That whole third space concept was practically synonymous with Starbucks for a while, but now they're reversing their open door policy, the one they put in place back in 2018 after that incident in Philadelphia.
Right. So as of January 27th, you'll need to make a purchase to use their space. They're also implementing a code of conduct to address things like disruptive behavior and other issues they say led to the closure of 16 stores in 2022.
16 stores, that's a pretty big deal. It makes you wonder if this is a sign of a bigger trend. Is the idea of a third space as we know it becoming unsustainable?
That's a great question. And it's worth considering the historical context here. The term third space was coined by sociologist Ray Oldenburg to describe places that offer a sense of community and belonging outside of home and work. Think coffee shops, pubs, libraries.
And Starbucks really capitalized on that idea, becoming the go-to third space for many. But even before the pandemic, these spaces faced challenges like rising costs and the shift towards convenience with things like mobile ordering and delivery apps.
Then the pandemic hit, accelerating these existing tensions. Suddenly, working from home and socializing online became the norm, and many third spaces were forced to close.
It's interesting, isn't it? We were all craving connection during lockdowns, but the very places that could have provided that sense of community were inaccessible.
Exactly, and studies have shown that the closure of third spaces during that time negatively impacted mental health, especially for marginalized groups who rely on them for support.
It's like losing a vital part of your social fabric. But getting back to Starbucks, their focus on efficiency drive-thrus, mobile ordering makes financial sense. Still, I can't help but think it changes the dynamic of the space. 70% of their corporate U.S. stores now have drive-thrus.
That's a significant number. It raises the question, how can you maintain a sense of community in a space designed for grab-and-go convenience? Could technology, for instance, play a role in fostering connections, even in a drive-through context?
That's a really interesting point. It's almost like we need to rethink the very concept of a third space in the age of digital convenience. Maybe this isn't the end of an era, but rather a call for reinvention. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're onto something. We might see a shift toward independent cafes stepping up to fill the void, offering that personalized, community-centered experience that people are craving.
I love that idea. Supporting local businesses and fostering community, it's a win-win. The article also mentioned hybrid spaces, those that combine dining, work, and social events.
Yes. Picture a co-working space with a coffee shop vibe, and maybe even some community events thrown in. These multifunctional spaces could cater to a wider range of needs and provide a more engaging experience.
That's fascinating. Instead of clinging to the old ways, it's about adapting and finding innovative ways to create spaces that foster connection and community.
And let's not forget about online communities. They might not be physical spaces, but they offer another avenue for connecting with like-minded individuals.
You're right, online communities have exploded in recent years, and they can definitely provide a sense of belonging. But what about the role of urban planning in all of this? I mean, can cities actually encourage the development of third spaces?
Absolutely. The Congress for the New Urbanism advocates for walkable, mixed-use neighborhoods that inherently encourage more spontaneous interactions and a stronger sense of community.
So instead of segregating homes from businesses, we'd have more opportunities for casual encounters.
Precisely. And they also talk about the need for zoning reforms. Sometimes outdated zoning regulations can hinder small businesses like independent cafes from thriving.
So by tweaking these regulations, cities could create environments that are more conducive to these kinds of gathering places. That's a really interesting perspective on how we can shape the future of our communities.
It is. Think about it. Bookstores, art galleries, community gardens. The possibilities are endless. By being intentional about creating spaces for connection, we can build stronger, more vibrant communities.
It makes you wonder, if we invested in social infrastructure with the same dedication we give to roads and bridges, what kind of world could we create?
That's a great question to ponder. However, with Starbucks shifting its focus, what happens when the company that practically defined the modern coffee shop experience prioritizes efficiency over community?
It's like witnessing a cultural shift in real time. While it's understandable that businesses, especially large chains, are looking to optimize and increase profits, there's a part of me that feels a bit nostalgic for those cozy, welcoming spaces where you could just be yourself.
I understand that sentiment. There's something special about those unplanned conversations and serendipitous encounters that can happen when people gather in a shared space.
The article mentioned that a driving force behind Starbucks' shift towards efficiency is their reliance on drive-thrus, with 70% of their stores having them as of 2023.
And those drive-thrus are generating the highest return for the company, indicating their current priorities.
It makes sense from a business perspective, but it makes you wonder what happens to that third space vibe when most customers are getting their coffee on the go.
It's a valid question. It's not just about the physical space, it's about the culture it fosters. Rushing through a drive-through doesn't lend itself to engaging with the space or the people around you. It becomes a transaction, not a moment of connection.
That lack of connection can have ripple effects on our communities. When we lose those opportunities for casual interaction, we lose something valuable. It's like we're becoming more isolated even though we're more connected than ever through technology.
It's a paradox of modern life. We have all these tools to communicate, but sometimes feel further apart.
So how do we balance efficiency and connection in our increasingly fast-paced world?
That's the question, isn't it?
Where do we go from here?
It is a complex question with no easy answers, but I think it starts with being more mindful of the choices we make.
You mean as consumers?
Exactly. Every time we choose to order through an app or swing through a drive-through, we're essentially casting a vote for a certain kind of experience, and those choices have consequences both for ourselves and for our communities.
So it's about recognizing that convenience often comes at the cost of connection.
Well put, and I think it's also about supporting businesses that align with our values. If we want to see more third spaces in our communities, we need to put our money where our hearts are.
That means choosing to spend our time and money at locally owned cafes, bookstores, and those businesses that prioritize community over sheer efficiency.
Exactly. It's about making conscious choices that support the kind of world we want to live in.
And it's not just about where we spend our money, it's about how we use our time and energy.
Absolutely. If we want to cultivate more connection in our lives, we need to be intentional about creating those opportunities.
That could mean making an effort to meet up with friends in person, joining a local club or group, or even just striking up a conversation with someone new at a coffee shop.
All those small actions can make a big difference. It's about weaving connection into the fabric of our everyday lives.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I'm starting to see Starbucks' policy change in a whole new light. It's not just about coffee. It's a reflection of a much larger cultural shift that's happening around us.
It is, and it raises some important questions about the future of connection in our society.
Where do we go from here? How do we ensure that connection doesn't get lost in our pursuit of efficiency? What role can each of us play in creating a world where community thrives?
These are all questions worth contemplating, and I believe the answers will emerge as we continue to navigate this evolving landscape of connection.
Well, I know I'm feeling inspired to be more deliberate about seeking out those third spaces, both online and offline, that nourish my soul and connect me with others.
I think that's a wonderful takeaway, and I would encourage all our listeners to do the same.
You know, before we move on, you mentioned earlier that the Congress for the New Urbanism has some interesting ideas about how urban planning can play a role in preserving these vital community hubs. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Of course, one of their key arguments is that mixed-use developments, which combine residential, commercial, and public spaces, can help create more vibrant and engaging communities.
I can see how that would work. Instead of having everything separated homes in one area, businesses in another, you'd have more opportunities for spontaneous interactions and a stronger sense of community.
Exactly. It's about creating environments that naturally foster connection.
And they also advocate for zoning reforms, right?
Yes. Sometimes outdated zoning regulations can actually hinder the development of third spaces. For example, they might make it difficult for small, independent cafes to open in residential areas.
So by making some adjustments to these regulations, cities could actually encourage the growth of more third spaces.
Precisely. It's about creating a regulatory environment that supports the kind of communities we want to see.
That's fascinating. It's like cities can actually play a proactive role in shaping the social fabric of their communities.
They absolutely can, and it's encouraging to see more cities recognizing the importance of social infrastructure.
Social infrastructure, I love that term. It really captures the idea that these spaces are just as essential to our well-being as physical infrastructure, like roads and bridges.
Exactly. And just like we invest in our physical infrastructure, we need to invest in our social infrastructure as well.
It makes you wonder, What if we approached urban planning with the same level of intentionality when it comes to creating spaces for connection? What kind of communities could we build?
That's a powerful question. And it brings us back to this idea of Starbucks shifting away from its role as a third space. What happens when the company that practically defined the modern coffee shop experience starts to prioritize efficiency over community?
It's a significant shift, and it's understandable that businesses, especially large chains like Starbucks, are constantly looking for ways to optimize their operations and increase profits.
Of course, they have a responsibility to their shareholders, and the demands of the market are always evolving.
But at the same time, it's hard not to feel a sense of loss. Those cozy, welcoming spaces where we could just hang out and be ourselves are becoming harder to find.
I share that sentiment. There's something truly special about those serendipitous encounters, those unplanned conversations that can happen when people gather in a shared space.
And as we discussed earlier, the increasing reliance on drive-thrus seems to be a major factor in this shift. The article mentioned that 70% of Starbucks' corporate U.S. stores had drive-thrus as of 2023.
And those drive-thrus are generating significant revenue for the company. It's a clear indication of where their priorities lie.
I understand the business rationale, but it does make you wonder, what happens to the third space atmosphere when the majority of your customers are getting their coffee on the go?
It changes the entire dynamic when you're rushing through a drive-through. You're not really engaging with the space or the people around you.
It becomes a purely transactional experience. You get your caffeine fix and move on.
Exactly. And that lack of interaction can have a ripple effect on our sense of community.
When we lose those opportunities for casual connection, we lose something valuable. It's like we're becoming more isolated even though we're more connected than ever through technology.
It's a paradox of modern life. We have all these digital tools for communication, but sometimes it feels like we're drifting further apart.
So what's the solution? How do we find that balance between efficiency and connection in a world that's constantly speeding up?
That's the million-dollar question, and I don't think there's a single easy answer.
But maybe it starts with recognizing that there is a problem, that we're losing something valuable in our relentless pursuit of efficiency.
I agree. We need to be more mindful of the trade-offs we're making. Convenience often comes at a cost, and sometimes that cost is connection.
So what can we do? As individuals, as communities, how can we reclaim that sense of connection that seems to be slipping away? It feels like we're at a crossroads, where we have to make a conscious effort to prioritize connection. What are some steps we can take to start moving in the right direction?
Well, it's not about rejecting efficiency outright, but finding ways to integrate connection into our daily routines and the spaces we inhabit. Think about supporting those local businesses, the bookstores and cafes that are actively cultivating that community.
Great, yeah. Being mindful consumers is a powerful tool. The article also highlighted the potential of hybrid spaces, combining work, dining, and social elements. It's like we're blurring the lines between different aspects of our lives to create more opportunities for connection.
Exactly. And let's not overlook the role technology can play. Online communities might not replace face-to-face interaction, but they offer valuable connections, sometimes even leading to real-world meetups.
Yeah, that's true. It's like we're witnessing a merging of digital and physical spaces, creating new avenues for connection. It's pretty remarkable when you think about it.
It really is. Humans are incredibly adaptable. And this evolution of third spaces demonstrates our innate need to connect no matter the circumstances.
I think that's a key takeaway from our deep dive today. While the forms and formats of third spaces may continue to evolve, that fundamental human need for connection remains constant.
Well said. It's a need that's woven into our very being. We are, after all, social creatures by nature. We thrive on those shared experiences and that sense of belonging.
And that need isn't going anywhere, even if our favorite coffee spots are shifting their focus. It makes me think about what concrete actions we can each take to foster more connection in our lives and communities.
It can start with small steps, being more intentional about choosing to spend our time at places that value community,
Yeah.
advocating for urban planning that prioritizes social spaces, and simply making an effort to connect with people in our daily interactions.
I like that. It's about remembering that connection is a two-way street. We're not just seeking it out for ourselves, but also contributing to a more connected world for everyone.
Absolutely. It's about being receptive to those chance encounters, those conversations that can spark new friendships and deepen existing bonds. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in creating a more connected and fulfilling society.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a sense of optimism. Yes, there are challenges to navigate, But there's also so much potential for creating a future where connection flourishes.
I agree. It's a collective effort, and together we can cultivate communities where everyone feels seen, heard, and connected.
This has been an incredibly thought-provoking conversation, and I want to thank you for sharing your insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to keep exploring these ideas and continue the conversation in your own communities. Until next time.